is framing the innocent. This is something we've talked about a little bit. Say the hypothetical case, country A has a citizen that violates country B. Country A ought to pursue justice against this person, but a lot of times it may be difficult to find the culprit. So in that case, they will frame the innocent. This undoubtedly reduces the civil unrest of country B and country A, but at the expense of this is the person's rights. You're framing an innocent person, and by the definition of utilitarianism, a person is a rational maximizer of his own utility. By framing this innocent person, you deprive him of this innate sense. And too often, it's interesting to see how the case of the law of economics simply applies more to a particular demographic and doesn't take into account other areas that the government functions in. So with that being said, we certainly agree with the proposition's remarks about the law of economics being applicable in certain situations, but by no means should it be the primary consideration. Thank you.
In addition to the points raised by my partner, one of the largest problems I see in attempting to apply economic analysis to lawmaking is its fundamental inaccuracy. By definition, this approach requires that the stakes in every case must be assigned a monetary value so that options can be weighed and costs can be minimized. In some arenas, this can be done effectively. Things such as property and commodities carry value, and there's readily available data that ensures that issues are quantified accurately. However, attempting to apply this method across the board leads to some detrimental results. Not every quality of life can be represented by an economic value, yet judges face the impossible task of putting a price tag on difficult issues such as the harmful effects of pollution on a neighboring town, the pain of a parent in the wrongful death of their child, or the loss of a limb. These instances are in fact unquantifiable, but in law and economics, their monetary valuation becomes the centerpiece of judicial analysis. The arbitrary figures assigned to the negative effects become the sole determinant in the case, and the actual merit and morality of the specific occurrences are ignored. Many victims are turned away, where by a simple application of common sense, it becomes obvious they deserve support. This unfortunate result arises because in numerous instances, price estimation is not merely inaccurate, it simply does not apply. The noted philosopher Immanuel Kant offers some keen insight on this belief. He speaks of the distinction between things that have a price and things that have dignity. Many losses, such as tangible property or loss of income, can have a price assigned to them, and economic analysis can be utilized in restoring value. However, there are many things that possess an inner worth, whose value cannot be witnessed in their effects, and these things are unquantifiable. A person's dignity or chastity can never be replaced, and attempting to assign comparative values is foolish. Also, special items such as a gift from a lost grandparent carries a special value that's lost in economic analysis. Economic analysis can be useful in some instances, and courts should be able to responsibly utilize the tool when necessary. Efficiency is favorable, but it should not be the overarching goal of our legal system. Even when applicable, our current legal system is not well equipped to be centered on efficiency. Our judges do not attend business school, and asking them to determine cases by way of economic analysis rather than legal doctrine is foolish. Instead, as their name states, judges are in the business of justice, and this is where they possess their expertise. Our country is based on specific morals we wish to uphold and specific rights afforded to our citizens. These principles are outlined by our Constitution and Declaration of Independence, and it's imperative that judges strive to uphold these to the best of their abilities. Our values should never be compromised in the hopes of saving a couple bucks. Efficiency focuses on allocating rights to those who value them more, or who can afford to pay more for them, but this should never outweigh who actually deserves them. Whether you honor them or not, the 10 Commandments are a great example of a widely accepted moral code, and they did not include any footnotes. God did not say to uphold the commandments when fiscally responsible, but to honor them above all else, and this is how we should treat our country's stated morals. Now, I'm not claiming that efficiency is worthless. It undoubtedly plays a role in our nation's longevity. Luckily, efficiency can often be achieved by way of the invisible hand. Our courts should thus focus on more important issues, such as protecting our morals and values, and efficiency will apply itself when necessary. For example, let's look at the same situation discussed by Travis. A factory is polluting and causing $100 worth of damage to surrounding citizens. But if the residents were to shut down the factory, they would lose $200 worth of production. Now, an economic approach would try to attempt to place the rights in the hand of those who value them and minimize social costs. The factory would be permitted to keep operating because its $200 loss is greater than the $100 of the residents. But this is wrong. The residents have a right to clean air, and it should not be taken away simply because the court finds their suffering to be valued less than the profits of the factory. The Courts should rule for the residents, not because of economics, but because of the simple fact that a company should not be permitted to operate if they are infringing on the rights of others. Really quite simple if we focus on our moral values as a society, and in fact, it so happens that all hope for efficiency is not lost. Ooh.
That maximizing efficiency is not something that could apply to daily life. For example, when you're driving home from work or school, you always take the shortest way home, right? In doing so, you save a valuable resource, which is time, as well as perhaps gasoline, the money you would be spending on gasoline. So we think that efficiency, you use it in your daily life, and it's important. And in making law, judges should similarly think in the context. Now, Mark gave an example of a billion people who live with a happiness unit of 1, and he says that is, for example, bad. I would disagree. For example, let's say there are 20 of you in this room, and you all enjoy living, and according to what Mark says, it would perhaps be better if one person lived instead and just enjoyed life 19 times as much as you. That would be a similar analogy. And I don't think that we would enjoy that, and I don't think that that makes sense either, quite frankly. Now, it is true that, as Mark said, that normative law and economics, which we are arguing for, places a higher priority on efficiency than on other intangible yet worthwhile values such as justice or desert. However, we already addressed why we think efficiency should have a higher priority in such areas of law as criminal law than these intangible values. Efficiency, the result of judges and lawmakers thinking in an efficient manner will be that society will be made better off, more so than in a case where they use other notions such as desert. So you mentioned that, but if in many criminal law cases where judges try to specifically apply the notion of desert, the ideal outcome is not reached, and many people suffer, in our view, quite needlessly. Moreover, Mark gave the example of framing innocent people. We are talking about lawmakers, and quite frankly, the topic is efficiency should be the primary purpose of lawmaking. That doesn't apply to our topic, we don't think. And moreover, you say that lawmakers should not use units of utility or money which are, you think, crude, and that they should they should use other intangible values instead as the prima facie purpose in making law. Is that going to work as well? Is that going to be easy? Is that as easy to compare what's the best decision, what's the best law to make? Or is it easier to try, as crudely as it might, and to use units of utility? Because, again, we're trying to make society better off.
Without going into too many of the objections raised by the proposition, I think it's important to note that the proposition clearly misinterpreted the point made about aggregate utilitarianism. The postulate was never laid forth to deprive half of this room of their lives. With that being said, the proposition begins with the normative claim. While it's important to address the normative claim, I think we need to understand that the world deals in reality, and that it's very important to consider the practical application of these laws. We cannot and ought not to use the normative claim as a protective blanket to wrap around ourselves and insulate our arguments from criticism.